Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the World of Momos podcast. And on this episode of Reflections and Reactions, I want to talk about the opposite of what I talked about in the last episode. So, I'm going to talk about why you shouldn't vote for reform.
So your message in this 2024 election is to vote Conservative?
No, I absolutely do not say anyone should vote for anybody. You should vote against the Labour Party, wherever you are. If your vote could prevent the election of a Labour MP, use it.
So vote Lib Dem?
If that would have that effect, yes.
If you live in Bristol Central, vote Green?
I suppose so, yeah. I think to stop Labour. I mean, less enthusiastically, but I just don't, we don't want them in with the majority.
And
I don't think people should be influenced by the polls. They may be right, they may be wrong. You and I have no way of knowing. Nobody has any way of knowing when the polls are right. Polls are often wrong.
So, I said on social media, on Twitter, that maybe I should do an episode within this week of the opposite and tell you why you shouldn't vote for reform. But actually, I recorded it on the same day, anyways, just to give a balance. So, I don't necessarily believe in this myself, I think, so I'm not convinced by this argument. But there is a point to say that, Reform Party, well, as I mentioned before, right, a lot of the candidates are paper candidates, and most people might not vote for them and will be in two minds. They might, when they go in that booth to vote, in the voting booth, and they might end up voting for Tories anyways, or as a second to Tory or whatever, like that. But the problem here is that it might give Labour an even bigger majority than it seems. What is the problem with that? You might say, like, okay, some people are saying, and sort of I'm of the mind as well, that maybe it's time for a Labour to actually get a majority and mess things up really badly so people get off from them, and not really go for a hung parliament, or not so major of a one, because if they get a huge majority, then the Tory party is completely destroyed and can be remade. However, it's easy for people to say that, who are not dependent on work, on 9 to 5 jobs, or who aren't independent from their work like that. um it will be the things that Labour are going to bring in, especially if they have a huge majority. I think so people are underplaying it, what can actually happen, on the cultural side. On the economic side, I think so a lot of people can withstand whatever comes our way. But on the cultural side, um, if the idea of Islamophobia is put in place, a lot of Islamists, all of Islamists are going to take even more advantage of it than they are now, and is going to see Britain change in the next 5 years with the tactics that they're going to put in place and demoralize the whole society even more, where we might see a brain drain of people who just don't believe in this culture, just have had enough, going out of UK, out of Britain, to countries where they are allowed to say their mind and not get in libel cases and so on. And their return might, they might not return. They might not return, and even if they return, they might return after a very, very long time when they're not financially active anymore, and that's a disaster. Some might say, "Oh yeah, let them go." Well, let them go. What? Like, if they have the skills, that we need, right? You let them go, those skill gaps will still need to be replaced. Guess what happens? More migration, right? So we can't just let them go like that. The other thing as well is with there will be a serious fight or serious clamping down of the gender critical people, all the advancements that we have made, they will try to bring it down, and they, if with a majority, they will be successful. So you'll see even more pervasive uh, woke things, not just within private sector depends on profit, so it's up to them if they get the profit or not to do a certain thing to up to a point. I know they are ideologically captured and they're working against their profits, but they don't they're not going, they don't tend to do that for too long, but this will make them do it for too long. But especially in the public sector, who are not dependent on the profits.
Regardless of who is in power, I will be pushing the government to do the right thing, to fully demedicalise gender recognition. We need self-ID, no ifs, no buts. A full ban on conversion therapy, no exemptions, no loopholes. To protect the Equality Act and resist calls to exclude trans women from women's spaces. And to properly fund trans healthcare so no one has to spend years on a waiting list.
You're going to see a lot of this pronoun business, this probably ending up with the mandatory pronouns, and hounding down of everyone who is a conservative, as a social conservative or something, making their life hell, maybe not discriminating against them, maybe there's no direct discrimination going on, but there's always indirect discrimination going on. It has been in the public sector. Everyone who works in the public sector knows this, that it happens. If you have conservative views, you either keep stumped about it, or you get hounded down for it, and you have other people around you who tell you, oh, how anyone who thinks conservative is bad, how reform, how Farage is like evil, and when you support Farage, you're evil and stuff. And people have to just like the Brexit thing, or if you support Brexit, you're a bad person or whatnot. And people just have to just have to keep quiet about it, and just take it, right? There is some sense of impartiality still left in the public sector for people working within the public sector. But when Labour comes in, I'm afraid that will go even more wild, and it's gonna demoralize even more people. What's even the point, sort of a thing, which is where they want you to be, which is where Labour want you to be. What's the point? Give up, stop resisting. Your traditions, your heritage, your culture doesn't matter, your religion doesn't matter anymore, Christianity doesn't matter, just give up. Let us take over with this new religion. And that's what's going to happen. So this is what I'm afraid of. I think so Hitchens have said as well. It's even worse than that, because I'm just touching on the surface level things. It's going to be even worse on the deeper level things, when how they're going to bring in the socialist aspects into this country.
Do you think the Conservatives deserve another 5 years in power?
Oh, deserve? No, but it's not a question of deserving. I mean, do we deserve a Labour government is the point. A vote is a practical act with measurable consequences. It's not an emotional spasm. If the Conservative Party bent down in front of me in this nice study here, and I was offered a cane to beat them on the bottom, if that were legal, then I'd be happy to do so. They deserve all kinds of punishment and being made to run around the playing fields as well. But that's not the point. We don't punish them by chucking them out of office. They'll all go off and spend more time with their money. The people we punish will be ourselves, who then have to endure the next 15 or 20 years under a new Labour government.
15 and 20 years?
I should think so. They're not giving up lightly, I promise you. Votes at 16.
But that'll be up to the voters. You actually think that we're looking at a vote not just for the 5 years, but for the next 2 decades?
Well, if the constitutional document I keep telling you about is enacted, it doesn't really matter very much, because even if they do lose office, they won't lose power.
And a very, very controlling socialist aspects. If you thought the lockdowns were controlling enough by the Tory party, by the socialist light people, so wait till Labour comes in. That'll be 10 times worse. Um, in every which way. And if they have a majority, they will not let go. And imagine having, 2 or 3 terms of Labour. I mean, I can't even imagine 1 term. 3 terms will be disastrous. 2 terms would be disastrous. But yeah, I mean, this is, as Hitchens says as well, you know, Keir Starmer is actually more dangerous than Tony Blair. It's just because he's bland, he gets away with it, and people don't take notice of him. People think he's not dangerous because he's not like, you'd say flamboyantly lefty enough, for people think, oh, he just goes along with everyone. But no, I think so he has that beta male energy that is working from within, a silent sort of killer that is filled with resentment for everyone who dislikes him, um for very good reasons, but dislikes him for very good reason. But he is filled with that, and that is his motivator. And see him work when he gets into power. you know he won't be ousted. He won't be ousted as people think. you know so what you would say, like, well, let's vote reform, then have a good opposition and not give Labour the majority that might give them. And which is where I agree with, like, everyone vote reform. But the problem is, everyone won't vote reform, no matter, because reform hasn't had enough time, and reform doesn't have the heritage. Reform hasn't done the grassroots level. Most of the candidates are paper candidates. People don't know them, right? So when people who are not constantly connected to social media, which is the majority of this country, they're not on TikTok, they're not on YouTube, they're not on Twitter. Most of them are not on Twitter. They're not on Facebook for these reasons. They're on Facebook just to connect with their friends, share some memes, or have a laugh, and that's it. Um these people don't know what reform is talking about. The more they know, the more they get on board. But we don't have that much time for the more they know sort of a thing. And when it comes down to it, they will end up voting for conservatives, right? And or Labor, because they don't even know what Labor is going to bring. They just think, oh, we need to change. Everyone is saying Tories are bad because it has been bad during Tory time. Oh, let's just vote Labor. So that's what they're going to do. But most are not going to vote because of that reason, because most of the regions where reform is might be operating, apart from like places like Clacton and stuff, where they have high profile MPs, most of the people in those localities will not know who the reform candidate is. They won't know what's going on because they haven't done the grassroots. They have never done the grassroots. They don't have a youth movement. They don't have these things. They might have it for 2029, okay, after these elections. So that's the counter argument, is to vote the Tories in because they're not as bad as Labour, and then work on the reform side of things to build them up. So in 2029, you have a proper centre-right uh, party to vote for and replace Tories. But it does mean that you keep the Tories on a life support.
One of the remarkable things of Brexit now, whether you are for or against it, it's broken the Tory party. It's broken the Tory party. The Brexiteers won, majority were Conservative, but getting it, doing it, living with it afterwards has broken them. It's exhausted them. It's taken away all their bandwidth. They had no time. And then, of course, the pandemic came along and that made it doubly difficult. But it's a bit like the Corn Laws in the 1840s. The repeal of the Corn Laws destroyed that Conservative Party as we knew it, and a new one had to rise from the ashes. Brexit has destroyed the Conservative party as we've known it. It's divided it, it's exhausted it, it's made it almost childish as they change leader after leader, and the prime ministership becomes a game of Tory musical chair.
Which is most people don't want, because most people are angry and they want to express their anger, and then they were filled with resentment themselves. They've had enough. But what you burn down out of resentment, you're going to later regret. So maybe I am half convinced by this argument as I'm talking about it, because I haven't written this down. I'm thinking as I'm talking to you about it.
This is the problem people have now. That an awful lot of people on the right. Oh well, the Tories are so terrible. Let's punish them. Frankly, it's like smacking your car on the backside for not starting. The Tories don't care if they lose office. In fact, I would suspect that about 80% of them are longing to get out of Parliament and go away and spend more time with their money. The way if you want to punish the Tories, keep them in office and make them clear up the mess they've left. The idea that you will, if people vote. If people vote Starmer to punish the Tories, they will punish themselves by many, many years ahead of government, which they will come to regret.
A Labour government is going to be disastrous. A lot of people work in the offices, and they just, or not just in the offices, of wherever, working in shops, working in as laborers and construction workers. Unless they are independent contractors, they're fine. But if they're connected to whatever company that is required to do those things, and they're trapped with those things as well. I mean, even as small as a shop, like I saw in the shoe shop, that SCHUH, whatever it's called, the shoe shop for the shoes, funnily enough. They had this on their window, protect our trans kids for this gay Ramadan, as I call it. This month of Game Ramadan, protect our trans kids, right? And it had they're actually celebrating furries, right? Not trans, but they had that, and they had the image of a wolf on top of it. And I was thinking to myself, like, how biblical is that? How biblical is that they are now promoting wolves, right? And they've been for a while anyways, but they're literally wolves that the shepherd is supposed to protect you from. And how biblical of an enemy that has become. And these things are part of our mythologies and our religions for a reason, because they are literal manifestations, and even if we are not doing them consciously, we end up doing them unconsciously, subconsciously, as these this trans community, well, not really trans community as such, but the LGBTQ plus, that has taken over, that is no longer about sexual freedom, but about a kind of revolution. And in terms of biblical terms, it does seem a lot like a satanic revolution. So yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy for next 5 years for people who have kids in schools, who are going to be indoctrinated now with no barriers, just full on now. That's going to be really hard. And people who have to go to work, and they just have to bear with these things. They have to keep their idea secret. It's like living in a communist country, which is going to become anyways eventually. People who earn substantial amount of money but will have to give more taxes and stuff, their lives are going to be in trouble, and they're going to get despondent and stuff. People are going to get bombarded with historical inaccuracies being told to us, and not many people have their opportunity to read up and research and stuff like that, so they are going to get indoctrinated by it. And in the media is going to become even more than now. Every part of our lives, our churches are going to be even more under attack. It is going to be hell. you know, already the certain sections of the Muslim community, which is like filled with Islamist and just conservative, normal believing Muslims, who are doing things to this society and getting away with it, and they'll just get away with it more and more and more and more. We'll see more of their promotion. We'll see more of the Muslim bloc taking hold of labor as well in certain areas. And it's going to get bad for the locals. So I know when people say, no, let the Tories burn, which I say as well, but maybe, I'm not, but maybe because I have that mentality, I'm not safe from the consequences of the words that I'm saying. As I review my own day job, as I review my own life, I think so I'm going to be in a hell lot of trouble when Labour comes in. Which is why I would like you to subscribe to my Substack. I'll put the description over here. But please do that. I might need it. Just become a paid subscriber.
If we are able to come in and form a government, I think we're going to have to increase the quota. Have you picked this up as well?
The Saudi government has reduced the numbers of people who are able to go to Hajj from this country. So many who want to go, who can afford to go,
and it's such a big and important thing that there's a real frustration that people are not being able to go.
So anything we can do to lobby the Saudi government to get more places for British Muslims would be appreciated.
Because it's Eid, it is also a time, I think, where all of us are able to celebrate the incredible contribution that Muslims have made to our country. We see it in business, we see it in culture, we see a better Britain. One of the things that is coming up over and over again is Islamophobia. And, well, you can see the stats, you can see the numbers rising, particularly since October the 7th. Although we shouldn't fall into the trap of thinking that before October the 7th, this was all heading in the right direction. It's been far too high for far too long. Clearly, we need to just say over and over again, Islamophobia is intolerable. It can never, ever be justified. And we have to continue with a zero tolerance approach. And I think there's more we can do in government. There's certainly stuff online which I think needs tackling much more robustly than it is at the moment.
What I'm hoping, Keir, is your experience as a prosecutor means you'll be thinking about the strategy we can use to make sure we take action against those who break the law.
But even, maybe people are saying it, a lot of the podcast, political commentators or social commentators are saying it because it's a firebrand thing to say right now, isn't it? And I think so. Peter Hitchens is right. He usually is right, isn't it, on most things. But we just figure out a few years later. It's going to be a disaster, and a lot of the people are going to suffer the consequences of wanting Tories dead so soon, so suddenly, even though they deserve it. They deserve it, but the people don't deserve it. The public doesn't deserve it. The consequences of that. So maybe an alternative best option, which I still am only half convinced by it, might be to vote the Tories in. They still won't be in majority, we know that. But, they're actually conservative when they are in opposition, rather than when they're in power, because they do actually oppose, they are an opposition voice. But from 5th of July, start working towards a cultural movement that pushes both Reform, both Tories, both other right-wing parties to form a proper cohesive sense of unity on the right, without the socialist and liberal elements, or as less as possible of the liberal elements. No socialism at all within that right. Maybe that's the best option. But yeah, I just wanted to give my alternative thoughts to it, because I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about the consequences to the masses of voting for, or advocating for voting for Reform, when we know that most likely Reform won't even get 5 to 10 seats. But I am convinced that that Farage is going to win his seat, which is important. He needs to be there, and maybe he needs to lead that. He probably does need to lead that center right sort of wing of politics, and just bring it to heel, sort of a thing. Anyways, that was it. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.